Heinz Cat Foods, good for... The coastal areas of the Carolinas this afternoon as Hurricane Bonnie approaches the region. Good afternoon and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Mike Motley. The first hurricane of the season is proving to be a monster. Bonnie, a Category 3 storm, has tropical storm force winds that encompass the diameter of some 400 miles. However, the storm's entire circulation is roughly the size of the state of Texas. Mandatory evacuations have been issued in some areas of the Carolinas and for North Carolina. For the latest on where and when the hurricane will make landfall, we turn to Mike Bono in the Forecast Center.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Yes, we have a very serious situation developing. A major hurricane offshore of the United States. It's a Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's Bonnie, and it's moving relentlessly toward the coastline. Evacuations have already been ordered. Let's take a look at what we have right now. The nearest in time is Brunswick County now has come in with a mandatory evacuation after 3 p.m. That's North Carolina. From north to south, Currituck County, evacuations are in order. Dare County, a little bit further south, including the Outer Banks and the Hatteras area. Hyde County, which includes the skinny offshore island of Ocracoke Island. Serious business now, evacuating Hyde County and New Hanover County, including Carolina Beach, Willington Beach, Wrightsville Beach. Voluntary evacuation until 5 p.m. and I'm getting information that after 5 p.m. now mandatory in New Hanover County. Onslow County, voluntary evacuations in low-lying areas, and Topsail Beach will close at 8 p.m. Tonight. So a lot of evacuations going on. Also in South Carolina, as you saw in the graphic, we have voluntary evacuations right now, right near the North Carolina state line in Georgetown and Horry counties. And Virginia Beach, in Virginia, we have a state of emergency declared. The Tidewater area may get a direct hit from this, if not from the ocean coming up from North Carolina, so we have a state of emergency in that area. Let's take a look at the latest position right now. For Hurricane Bonnie, it's 29.5 north, 75.2 west, and that is centered 340 miles south of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Notice, south of Cape Hatteras, moving to the west of north. So it is edging again toward the coastline. 115-mile-an-hour winds are of major hurricane strength. That's the first major we've had in the Atlantic Basin this year. And the movement has sped up since last night, 16 miles an hour, north-northwest, sometimes veering toward the northwest as pressure is holding steady at 963 millibars. That's an intense hurricane. We have hurricane warnings in effect, thus the evacuations. North Carolina-Virginia border to Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. Not that it can't hit other areas with hurricane force. We're still watching south of Murrells Inlet to Savannah and up to Cape Henlopen, Delaware. And again, it could even make impact and then curve out to sea and go over part of the Tidewater of Virginia. So you need to be ready for that eventuality with high surf advisories either side of the hurricane watches and warnings. Well, Bill Keneally has been on the coast at Carolina Beach, which is in New Hanover County, and Bill has already gotten a rain squall. Bill, I'd be curious to know what the winds were as that squall was going through.
Mike, the squall's come through. There still looks like another one coming by now, and the surf is kicking up somewhat.
The winds as these squalls come in, though, are picking up likewise, probably on the order of 30 to 35 miles per hour at times. Let's take a pan down the beach here, Mike, and see it's rather deserted. I'd say the time for indecisiveness is now over with. You are either staying or you are going. And if you're out here on the barrier island, you are going. The evacuation order is mandatory as of 11 o'clock. By the way, Mike, there's a front-end loader down there. What they're doing is actually toting the lifeguard stands away and getting them out of harm's way. So earlier, we had a lot of folks out here. I think finally the warnings have been heeded. And as we said, the evacuation order here applies after 11 o'clock tonight. Even the inland areas, make sure that you can ride this out if you have the wherewithal to ride it out. Otherwise, my best bet would be to move westbound or head northbound on Interstate 40. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, Bill, thanks a lot. We'll be talking to you again. That's Bill Keneally on the North Carolina coastline. We now have our senior meteorologist, Buzz Bernard. Buzz, we're looking at rain bands coming in, and that's the first sentinel of the storm moving toward the shoreline.
Yeah, those are the advance guard, and we should emphasize here the rapidity with which things are going to happen. We'll have tropical storm force winds on the coast of North Carolina and South Carolina by late this evening, midnight perhaps, and then hurricane force winds likely around dawn tomorrow, so there's not a whole lot of time left.
Okay, that's good heed. By daybreak, there could even be hurricane conditions on the coastline. Let's take a look at the radar, which shows almost a training effect of some rain squalls up around New Bern down to Wilmington.
This edition of Storm Watch will focus in on some severe thunderstorms rumbling in Ohio and Pennsylvania, but the big story is in the tropics, and it's headed towards the eastern seaboard of the United States, and that's in reference to Hurricane Bonnie. In our tropical update, we focus in on what's going on right now, including the very latest position that we have available as of 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. If you're plotting along with us here on the Weather Channel, you can track the center of Hurricane Bonnie now at 30 degrees north, 75.6 west. That's about 330 miles south of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Wind still clocked at 115 miles an hour, putting it in a Category 3 on a scale of 1 to 5 on the Safford-Simpson scale, moving north-northwest at 16 miles an hour. Central pressure, if you have a home barometer, check out 28.44. That tips the scale all the way over, indicating a very intense area of low pressure. That's basically what a hurricane is. Even though the center of the storm is still well from Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, the effects, the outer rings of precipitation have already brushed the coastline already. With the anticipation of the storm moving ever so close to the coastline over the next 24 to 36 hours, hurricane warnings are posted from Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, now extending on up to Chicotee, Virginia, and on either side of that, south and north, down through Savannah, Georgia, and northward to Cape Henlopen, Delaware, hurricane watches are in effect. A warning means take necessary precautions now. There's a possibility for evacuations. We've had some mandatory and voluntary evacuations have already been ordered. Please seek the immediate need of those situations and be prepared to move to a place of safety. Make sure you collect your disaster supplies kit. Make sure that your family has the necessary things, including medication, water, and insurance papers you may need as time goes on. Also, in the case of an evacuation ordered, obey advisories promptly. Make sure you turn off the electricity and water, lock the windows and doors, and follow the recommended evacuation route. Very important for orderly movement of people away from the coastline in order to be successful in this evacuation. Already we can see some of the Outer Banks affected by some bands of showers over the last hour or two. Here comes another squall in the periphery of the hurricane as it continues to inch on off towards the northwest at about 16. Massive area of hurricane force winds extend out some 145 miles from the center, and even tropical storm strength, that's 39 miles an hour or greater, will be felt out 200 miles. With that in mind and its current track, you could start to feel tropical force winds even as early as midnight tonight and hurricane force winds before dawn tomorrow. So again, urging those that need to take care of business, do it now with the light of day. Don't wait till later on tonight or even after midnight. Maybe a dangerous time to be evacuating or moving out. Heavy surf advisories. Surfers are not recommended to be out there. Strong undertow as well, anywhere from Jupiter Inlet all the way up to Sandy Hook, New Jersey. So be extra careful in those areas. Small craft should be extra careful, and surfers and swimmers, not a thing to be doing out there. Very dangerous riptides. Here you can see the close-up satellite perspective. Very impressive circulation of clouds, thunderstorms, and winds, all continuing to inch their way on off towards the north-northwest. A different perspective. Again, the outer bands of this particular Hurricane Bonnie already influencing portions of South and North Carolina with cloudiness. You'll be in and out of the sunshine today, but more of the winds, clouds, and rain will be picking up. Hurricane Danielle, another hurricane out in the Atlantic. This one moving west-northwest at 21. It's located about 1,150 miles east of the Lesser Antilles with 80-mile-an-hour winds. Will continue to crank up. We're watching this one closely as well. It's well and out in the Atlantic, but the Lesser Antilles, right in this general vicinity right here, may be impacted over the next 36 to 48 hours with some of the winds increasing there. We're also concerned about this particular feature already interacting with Espanol. This tropical wave may have an environment to strengthen a little bit once it clears the island and gets into a little bit more of the warmer water. So we're going to have to watch this feature very closely. Farther on out into the Atlantic, there goes Danielle moving westward. Not much happening off the African coastline. And in the eastern Pacific, Hurricane Howard continues with 145-mile-an-hour winds moving west-northwest away from land.
This is meteorologist Bill Keneally. We're in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, tracking the progress of Hurricane Bonnie. Stay with us for a full report on Weather Center after your local forecast.
Last year, Americans bought over 4 million back massagers, thousands of vibrating chairs, and so many things that look like this and this that we wonder if some people aren't sleeping on the wrong mattress.
That happened in New Jersey was 1903. It hasn't happened this century at all in Delaware. And it is not, I repeat, not going to happen with Bonnie. That's the worst case, the greatest danger to life and property. These are the two possibilities. One we call the remnants. It hits North Carolina and then weakens as the center goes over land. So it's no longer a Category 3 major hurricane when it gets up to this area. Could be a Category 1 or it could be a tropical storm. You get a lot of rain, you get a lot of wind. The last time that happened, 1996, with Fran, we had quite a bit of flooding around here. The other possibility is what we call the fringe effects. It grazes North Carolina, makes the right turn, and goes out to sea a little bit, anywhere from 50 to 200 miles. We know that a storm has hit. We get some wind. Maybe we get some rain, especially at the shore, but it's not nearly as dangerous as those other two possibilities. And, of course, a new update will be out right around 5 o'clock. Larry and Renee?
All right, Glenn, we'll check back with you then.
I was going to ask you, Glenn, you talked about a couple of possibilities there, about it going off the shore or coming inland towards us. Can you give us some probabilities on that?
Right now, the greatest probability is for it to make that right turn and go out into the ocean. Of course, the question is how far out into the ocean. We're not just talking about a point here. This is a very big hurricane. So even if the center misses us by 100 miles, the New Jersey shore and the Delaware shores will know that a hurricane is around. It could still get hurricane force gusts, even if the center, the eye, does not go right overhead.
So the probability is we're going to get hit, just don't know how hard.
That we're going to get the fringe part. Right. That is the greatest likelihood right now.
And you'll be bringing us up to date again at 5 o'clock.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Glenn.
Carolina coast, and mandatory evacuations are going into effect in some areas. The cause of this activity is, of course, Hurricane Bonnie, a Category 3 storm that has tropical storm force winds that encompass a diameter of 400 miles. However, the storm's entire circulation is roughly the size of the state of Texas. For the latest on where and when the hurricane will make landfall, we turn to Dan Atkinson in the Forecast Center.
Thanks a lot, Mike. And this is a day when about 200,000 residents and visitors have been ordered to evacuate the low-lying Outer Banks area of North Carolina. And in the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, the hurricane warnings have been extended southward. More about that in just a moment. First off, here's a look at the evacuation information. A list of the mandatory evacuations in North Carolina. They've been issued for the Outer Banks area in Currituck County, Dare County, Ocracoke Island, and Brunswick County. Voluntary evacuations. Actually, they were voluntary until this hour. Then now they have become mandatory for Onslow County, North Carolina, Wrightsville County, and Hanover County, which includes Carolina Beach, Wilmington Beach, and Cure Beach. The evacuations were voluntary for those areas until 5 p.m., and now they have become mandatory. And in South Carolina, voluntary evacuations are underway in Horry County and Georgetown County. Meanwhile, in Virginia, no evacuations, but the governor has declared a state of emergency as heavy rain and wind could affect the area. Very important change in the hurricane warning area. As of the 5 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, hurricane warnings have been extended southward. We'll show you that next after showing you first these latest coordinates. Hurricane Bonnie centered at 5 p.m. near latitude 30.5 north, longitude 76.2 degrees west. That would put the center of this large hurricane about 290 miles to the south of Cape Lookout, North Carolina. Maximum sustained winds still about 115 miles per hour, moving still to the north-northwest at around 16 miles per hour, and estimated central pressure 963 millibars. Here is a view of the latest. Actually, this has not been updated. It shows hurricane warnings down to Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. They have been extended southward now to Cape Romaine, South Carolina. So that has been a change. The hurricane warnings are in effect now from Cape Romaine, South Carolina to Chincoteague, Virginia, including Pamlico and Albemarle Sounds and Chesapeake Bay from Smith Point southward. You'll notice that the hurricane watches continue in effect on down towards Savannah, Georgia. So they're in effect from Savannah to Cape Romaine, South Carolina, and from Chincoteague, Virginia to Cape Henlopen, Delaware. We're going to be taking you now to one of our Weather Channel viewing positions along the Carolina coast, where Jim Cantori is standing by at Atlantic Beach, watching as the storm approaches the low-lying areas there along the Carolina coast. Jim, you're near Morehead City, and looks like you're in the sunshine for now, but that's going to be changing in the hours to come, isn't it?
Yeah, Dan, I think it is. And unfortunately, you know, the new information you're giving me, the only thing, what flashed through my head when you were talking to me about the new hurricane warnings was Opal. I don't know why, but it just did, and I want to share that with you because I remember that morning when Opal decided to accelerate north out of the Gulf, and everyone was caught off guard. So I guess what I'm trying to feel here is maybe we shouldn't be caught off guard down through the South Carolina coast and even the northern Georgia coast, because if this thing starts to make a beeline toward the Carolina coast, some folks, I'm afraid, are going to be caught off guard. So let's just take that as a word of the wise. Now that we're under mandatory evacuations here at 5 o'clock, we also have heard word that 50-mile-per-hour winds. There's only two ways out of here, Dan. This is a 26-mile barrier island. There's two bridges, one on each side. And as of 7 o'clock tonight, there is a curfew. So they don't want anyone on the streets. They're trying to keep a lot of people, you know, from doing their last-minute preparations and just wrapping that up. But they're also trying to keep the folks off the bridges, because once the winds hit 50 miles an hour, they close the bridges, period. You have to stay here if you have not made it across yet, and you cannot get back across either. So that's something else to consider. 50-mile-per-hour winds will close the bridges. So, folks, it is 5:04. Get everything you need to do done, and definitely head off the island if you're going to do so. If not, get up the last-minute boarding and whatnot and hunker down for possible landfall. But no doubt things definitely change as they start to issue those warnings onto the south. So everyone in a watch needs to be prepared, especially as we get into tonight, because it looks like after midnight toward tomorrow morning, winds are going to go from tropical storm force on into hurricane force. Let me show you what else has been happening. Look at these waves. Huge breakers as we take you toward the pier here, just up the road a piece. And these were just huge, 10 to 15 feet easily. This was at the time of high tide when the surf was actually breaking all the way up the beaches. Well, now things have changed a little bit. We're just after low tide, and the surf has gone out just a little bit. To my south, which is offshore here, so those rain bands with potentially tropical storm winds are not too far off. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. We'll be checking back with you. Jim Cantori of the Weather Channel standing by at Atlantic Beach near Morehead City, North Carolina. We're joined now in the Forecast Center by the Weather Channel's hurricane expert, John Hope. And John, as the hurricane bears down on the coast, the area near and to the north of where it actually reaches land is going to be feeling really the strongest impact of the storm surge.
Well, that's what we're the most concerned about always on the coast, Dan, is the storm surge, because the storm surge causes more damage. It actually causes more fatalities than any other aspects of the hurricane. And this is going to have a significant storm surge, we do believe. We're looking at something in the order of 9 to 11 feet and waves on top of that. So if you add 5 foot of waves, say, to 10 or 11 feet, you're talking about a 15 or 16 feet where the water might rise, and battering waves there to tear down buildings.
And we see here the graphic showing that area where the threat is greatest for the significant storm surge with this major hurricane. We take a look, John, at the radar here and show us what you see in terms of the rain bands approaching the coast now.
Well, the rain bands are rather slowly approaching the coast, but approaching it they are. We've had one rain band come into North Carolina early this afternoon. That was a very narrow one. You can see the remnants of it back there. But once this whole area gets in here, from that point on, we'll have continuous heavy rain.
Now, as we take a look at the satellite view, you have been keeping an eye on the formation of an eye, haven't you?
Well, it's not well formed yet. We can see pretty good evidence of where it is. It's not very hard to pick out where the center is, but we wouldn't call that an eye. Now, the reconnaissance aircraft have not been out there for a while, and the last time they were out there, the eye wall wasn't that well defined. We're anxious to see on the next reconnaissance flight whether or not the eye wall will be well defined.
Well, when do you expect the tropical storm force winds to be felt and then increasing to hurricane force?
On the coast tonight, for sure. By midnight, we think there'll be sustained tropical force winds. We see them offshore in the buoys a couple hundred miles off. They've been there for a long time. We expect to see hurricane force winds impacting the coast by tomorrow morning, and then sometime likely during the day later tomorrow, we expect to see the eye of the hurricane come ashore.
And one quick last question, how much rain do you think this might produce?
Well, tremendous quantities of rain. All hurricanes have a lot of rain, so something, 10 inches or more, certainly not unexpected.
Serious problems in store, and we'll check back with you. The Weather Channel's John Hope, and we want to, of course, invite you to check in our online service. If you're going to be away from your television set, weather.com is the place to find out what's happening with Hurricane Bonnie and elsewhere across the country. And now back to the studio, and Mike Martin.
Now it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Storm watch is highlighted by severe weather in the northeast, and of course, Hurricane Bonnie as we get the latest on the tropics. 30.5 north, 76.2 west. That puts the center of the storm about 290 miles south of Cape Lookout, North Carolina. Keep in mind that's a central point of where the low pressure is. The effects of this hurricane are felt out hundreds of miles from that center. In fact, already we've had a few squalls brush areas of South and North Carolina and an increase in the winds with those squalls in their passage. 115 miles an hour, the center of that storm is producing winds up to that strength. Still moving north-northwest at about 16 miles an hour. And the central pressure, that's an indication of how deep the low is. Check your home barometers, 28.44. Normal atmospheric pressure is about 29.92, so significantly lower, indicating the strength of that low pressure system. With that in mind, the current movement, the current strength of the storm, in the next 24 to 36 hours, areas of South and North Carolina may be impacted with hurricane conditions. That's why hurricane warnings are out from Cape Romaine, South Carolina, extend a little bit farther southward than what they were earlier to Chicotee, Virginia, and to the north and south of that, dropping down to Savannah, Georgia, and extending northward to Cape Henlopen, Delaware, are hurricane watches. Now is the time to be making necessary precautions and preparations for this particular storm. What can you do? If a hurricane warning is issued from those on the South and North Carolina border, protect windows with shutters or plywood, store or anchor items kept outdoors, fill containers with drinking water. You're going to need that, especially if you're evacuating from your home. Fill the bathtub with water for sanitary use, and also keep in mind that you would probably need to place valuables in waterproof containers as you take them with you. Please tune into the Weather Channel frequently for updates. Get some cash, because the ATM machines, if you're without power, will not provide it then, and a full tank of gas will be needed as well. Just a few tips to pass along in this time of preparation. Strike probability is most likely showing up on the North Carolina coastline. We expect that the winds to increase to tropical storm strength on the South and North Carolina coastline by dawn tomorrow. And it looks like hurricane force winds will probably follow soon thereafter. Storm surge, another element that we have to be concerned with, is that wall of water it's developing will be coming on in and affecting North Carolina and even Virginia with as much as 8 to 12 feet of water, definitely causing some serious erosion close to the beach area. Already the tropical storm force winds are brushing the coastline. This would be winds in excess of 39 miles an hour, while hurricane force winds are felt out some 145 miles. So be extra careful. You're going to start to see the increase of the winds, especially along the coastal areas, as the evening wears on. Surf is really getting rough out there from Jupiter Inlet all the way up into the Merrimack River region. We're still expecting to have some heavy surf, so keep that in mind. If you have any plans close to the coastline, think again. Here's what it looks like on a satellite perspective. You can see the bands of precipitation still wrapping around the center. Some of those inching in closer to the coastline of North Carolina. Maybe we'll be brushing on in later this evening. We'll have further updates on this at the top of the hour. Danielle, also a hurricane, 85-mile-an-hour winds, now showing up about 1,030 miles east of Lesser Antilles. Over the next 24 hours, it may show up with some tropical storm force winds. Possibly a hurricane watch may be issued for the northern areas of the Lesser Antilles with anticipation of Danielle's movement. Coming off the west coast, you can see Danielle moving off towards the left of your screen while we examine the area in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. We're also watching this area with Espanol as we'll continue to move westward for possible development. And Hurricane Howard continues to move west-northwest, packing winds 145 miles an hour.
Evacuations up and down the Carolina coast as Hurricane Bonnie heads in that direction. For the very latest on the progress of this dangerous storm, watch Weather Center just ahead.
Yves Saint Laurent eyewear by Luxottica. What do you want people to see?
I want you to see discretion.
Dignity.
I want you to see how the girl next door turned out.
Let them see you in Yves Saint Laurent eyewear by Luxottica.